Welcome to episode 58 of the World Triathlon podcast, where we get to it with one of the great coaches on the circuit, Paulo Sousa. He's always spoken his mind, and for the next 80 minutes goes deep on the values he holds dear and makes himself and his athletes accountable to. Paulo opens up on being a fanboy of Simon Whitfield, as well as everything from his verdict on the upcoming Arena Games to the 3 newcomers to his squad in 2022 with big things ahead of them. Hope you enjoy it. Speaking of the Arena Games, the first event of the brand new series takes place in Munich on April the 9th and will be live, direct and completely free to watch on triathlonlive.tv, featuring some of our favourite past pod people including Alex Yee, Chase McQueen, Justus Nieschlag, Beth Potter and star of the next episode, the mighty Martin van Riel. Born and raised in Lisbon, Portugal, Paulo Sousa is the man behind PS Triathlon Training Group, stable of some of the biggest names in world triathlon. Always a refreshingly outspoken voice, not afraid to tell it how he sees it. He graduated in mechanical engineering, got into coaching in Portugal in 2000. By 2010, was working with Olympic champion Simon Whitfield, became a USAT Coach of the Year, and today his training group brings together athletes from as far afield as Japan and Belgium. So Paulo, welcome. How are you and where are you?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I've always wanted to do one of these talk shows, so thank you. I'm in Montegordo, Portugal, which is, if you see Portugal as a rectangle, it's on the lower right corner of Portugal and right up against Spain.
That lower right corner of Portugal being pretty much the home of triathlon there, right? Is that pretty much where you're home from home, your base, would you say? You live in the States kind of permanently, right? But is Portugal still very much your home?
We started my residencies in the US for sure, but I don't know where I live. but starting in the beginning of 2019 until the 2018 season, our operation was centered around Southern California, the San Diego area, and for the 2019 season, we moved the squad back to Europe. And we settled down here in Montegordo. That for me, I could work pretty much in any place in Europe, but it does makes things simpler, speaking the language and kind of like knowing how things work here. So it's been a good match for us to keep coming back here every year.
Yeah. And was it, when you were based in the States, was it still very much like an international group, or did being based out there kind of impact slightly the sort of the makeup of the athletes that you were working with as well?
Mm-hmm. Up until Rio and then 2016, the squad was all US athletes that would move down to San Diego and train with the squad. Mm-hmm. The start of the quad for Tokyo, then I recruited a few international athletes that in the 2018 season spent most of the winter and spring in California with the squad. So after Rio, the makeup of the squad changed a lot between mostly Americans or totally Americans to an international squad that we have now.
Who were those first European settlers in San Diego then on your books?
It started with Claire Michel. Uh-huh. She was the first one to come out. That was an international athlete, but Claire also, it was a easier transition for her because she's Belgian, but she grew up in the US. Mm-hmm. and went to college at Oregon. So it was like a little bit of easier transition for Claire. But then at the beginning of the 2018 season, Kaidi Kivioja and Miriam Casillas came over to California to train with us, and for sure for those guys was a big change for them to come and train in the US.
Well, yeah, it'd be interesting to know what it was that kind of brought those over to you in the first place as well. But yeah, this is going to be a bit of a balancing act. I want to know about you and your coaching and your methods and philosophies, as well as obviously the athletes you work with. But yeah, to start with, yeah, what was it that lit the triathlon coaching fire in you?
Yeah, triathlon coaching has been like the only coaching I've done. Back in the day, I worked with some athletes from modern pentathlon, and just left me with a deep hatred of modern pentathlon, and mostly. So I started coaching when I was managing the team from the triathlon team from my university, and started coaching my friends, and then started coaching most of the athletes in the team, and coaching came sort of like naturally to me as I pursued my academic studies, and then in 2010 came to a point that between doing scientific research and coaching at a high level, something had to give, and I chose to just coach full time.
So it's something that fitted with you, with your personality quite quickly, did it? Like that, being able to work with what was at the time your kind of friends and colleagues at university, and obviously having the right approach that you felt you could kind of coach them without, stepping over that line as a peer.
I think looking back, this was mid to late 90s, and looking back, the sport was very, very young everywhere, and also very young in Portugal. We would have a big race back in the day was like 120 people would show up at a race, and that would be a big race in Portugal. Since then, the sport has exploded everywhere, but also in Portugal, and so basically it was a time where there wasn't like established triathlon coaching, and some people did coaching. So basically there was like a gap that me, in the role of team manager, I was identifying that, well, we have a problem here, that like the coaches are not very good, and I thought I could do a better job, that kind of thing. So that's how I got involved with coaching, at the same time that, my job or my academic studies were not connected to coaching or to sports.
Yeah, I read a quote from your sort of early days, I suppose it was, about your coaching philosophy back in 2011. I think it was saying it's not about reinventing the wheel, it's about how you spin it. 10 plus years on, is that something that you still live by? How is that? How have you changed over the years in terms of your approaching to coaching?
Well, I think that my coming up as a developing also like as a mechanical engineer, I try to apply the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, and is
that keep it simple, comma, stupid, or keep it simple?
It's keep it simple, comma, stupid.
Right.
I don't know if you wanna put the comma there or not, but for sure, I'm someone that's very pragmatic and very that try to not reinvent the wheel like that, and just see how we can get better by being good at the fundamentals, and being good at I always feel that, and feel even more like the more work that I do, and the more time I'm in coaching, I always feel that sometimes you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, you just have to be the less stupid person in the room, meaning that a lot of the times a lot of people make mistakes by trying to be too smart or smart, while a simple solution, something that's been tried and true, something that we know that works, is going to be more adequate to a lot of situations.
But as a coach, do you find that increasingly the athletes you're working with have their own opinion on things that they should be doing, or I read about this thing online, or how does that work?
I think that obviously with the growth of social media, people, both athletes and coaches, are more aware of what others are doing. Either you look at Strava and see what athletes are doing, or on Instagram, athletes put sessions on Instagram and all that. So I think that there's like a bigger awareness to what everybody else is doing. And for sure, I have athletes that come to me and say like, well, I saw this guy or that guy doing this session or doing this kind of work. What do you think? If there's some validity to this, we think we should do this. You think, and we have like a conversation regarding that. I'm increasingly not the my way or the highway kind of coach, and I think that it's interesting. It's interesting that when athletes are able to take ownership over what they do on a day-to-day basis, and I think we can go sometimes like the extra mile if their levels of ownership are higher. So, for example, if somebody's, I might not think about having them like do like a really hard session, but sometimes they see that like their competitors doing a really hard session, so they're motivated to do a really hard session. I'm like, hey, that's a good idea, and we can integrate with what we do right now. So it's I see like everyone knowing what each other is doing as kind of like sometimes like a source of motivation and a source of like athletes taking ownership over their program. And also when athletes come to me with ideas, that is also like a way of individualizing the training that they do. Sometimes when working with the squad, there's simply for operational reasons, ends up that a lot of the athletes are doing the same kind of work. So anything that comes in and increases the level of individuality that the program has, then I'm all for it.
So back in the day, you might have been a little less inclined to take on board some suggestions, would you? But I guess there must be a balance, right? Between, you don't want people just turning up to the pool or to the track and being a piece of meat that you're kind of barking at. It's kind of nice if the suggestions are good, and presumably people would learn quite quickly with you whether or not it's the type of suggestion that you would perhaps be inclined to take on.
Yeah, I don't see it as I hope it's not like a tightrope for the athletes that they have to like be careful. I think that this team comes a lot in the conversation I have with athletes, is that I understand that like sometimes it's hard to talk to me, but I try to make it as comfortable as possible for athletes to come forward with suggestions or conversations regarding training. I try to, even the athletes that are not like forthcoming with ideas or suggestions or input over their program, I try to also be proactive in like having regular meetings that we can just not have a meeting just because something happened, and hopefully we can have a conversation regarding what session we're going to be doing before the session starts, before we're on the track. But I think it's really important that everyone's on the same page in what we're doing. Like I said, like more and more, it's very, very important to me that the athletes have full ownership over what they do, and that they make the program that I have for them, that I put in front of them, they make it their own program, and not just me telling them what to do.
Do you miss a little bit the cloak and dagger, the subterfuge, the pre-social media days where nobody really knew what was going on in another group necessarily, except probably chit chat when they met for a race or whatever? But yeah, is it a bit of a shame that some of that's been lost, do you think?
I think it was a different time for sure, where basically sometimes it was like this secret code, this coach is very secretive and you don't know what they're doing, and then like oh, this coach did like this presentation, oh, give me the PDF right now, I need to see what's in it. And those times for sure are completely over. Most of the stuff is out there, obviously, like not all the stuff is out there, and for sure like social media changed the landscape of that secretive. But I think that it's very easy to see that even even for those athletes that put everything, quote unquote, on social media, there's a lot of room for them to do things that we don't see. And so basically, like it's not like an open book, but it's kind of like you take a peek. You get some, you get to read some chapters, but you don't get to read the whole book.
Well, of course not. No, I suppose because it is such a big book, right? And it's a book that is constantly being written, not to sound cliched or whatever, but yeah, if you have someone who, like you said, pragmatic and have a very sort of strong sense of purpose, as I guess 99% of coaches, successful coaches, must have to have. But given the relentless number of, whether it's a podcast or an article or a scientific journal or whatever, that it is endless, the amount of information that you could presumably try and source if you wanted to. And presumably you have to kind of keep out a lot of the noise, but try and filter in the bits that you feel will be helpful. But I mean, it must be difficult, is it?
I don't find it particularly difficult because my filter is really high in terms of what I consume. So basically, I end up not consuming a lot of podcasts, a lot of articles, a lot of blogs. I sometimes when there's something that interests me and it's like a high level thing, then and basically like a coach that I respect from triathlon or other sports that catches my attention, then I will take the time. But it's not like, just to give you an example, I was interested in I bought a book. I was interested in some research on how motor learning happens, and I started with the book, and I bought the book, and then I realized that the author had a podcast, and then I go and I see that the latest podcast was episode 384, and I was thinking like there's no way that I could consume 384 episodes, even if some of these are short. So basically, like I don't have like podcast habits of like always listen to this one or always listening to that one, and try very hard to just not have like a lot of information flooding me. And going back to a point that you made, a lot of times it's the athletes that bring me some stuff for me. So the athletes say like, did you listen to this podcast? And I said no. and then they have like questions about it, or I look into it, or I listen to it. There's a podcast that I really enjoy just because they have really good show notes that they publish. So basically, like on the show notes, I can get the sense of what they talked about in, I can do it in 2 minutes by reading the show notes instead of listening to the podcast. And the same with social media, where a lot of the times it's the athletes are going to bring me like some information where they say like, did you see this session? Or this guy's doing this. Oh, those guys are at this place doing altitude or whatever. And that might provoke like a conversation about it, or I'll look into it. But for sure, like I said, like my filter is really high, and I try to focus more on day-to-day, the work that I do with the athletes, and less on the randomness of information that's out there.
Yeah, I guess the randomness is the key, isn't it? There's a lot of fluff there, and a lot of those things are aimed more at the likes of me or whatever than someone who's already a high performance coach. So yeah, I guess you're already at that point where the filter needs to be strong. So going back to,
I wouldn't say I would. Yeah, like I didn't say this to say like, oh, I'm such a high level that I can't waste my time. It's not about that. It's just it's a question of like it will be the difference between if you're a stock trader, the difference between looking at the terminal and seeing the market go up and down every second, or if you have investments and you check the market every week, and because you're going to hold your stocks for longer. So basically, like I try to be more the the person that's going to be looking at the stock market every week, not go not feel the emotions of the random changes, and because that's more in line with my philosophy of following the process and having a process for myself and for each of the athletes that I coach, and the process cannot be you cannot be like responding to every randomness, everything that comes your way.
Nice analogy there with the stock market. I like that. So just one last thing on kind of your earlier career. The Simon Whitfield thing, that was interesting. Like working with someone who had already been Olympic champion and so on. Is that one of those times where you felt you were slightly the student as well as the teacher as well? Or was he very much, I'm in your hands, I need to, and was looking for you to just lead the way and bring in new
for message? Sure, I have no doubt that, like, for sure I learned a lot more from Simon than he learned from me. I think he was a tremendous, like, I coached Simon for a year, but the relationship before and after it was something that was like incredible learning experience to be around. This word is thrown around too often in triathlon as well, which is the word champion, but it's for sure, it's like being around a champion and somebody with a very particular mindset that just being around him elevates the level of everyone. So basically, when by talking to him initially or by coaching him, my level had to be elevated to just be at close to his level, and it was an incredible learning experience for me. And it was also the biggest motor for me to start coaching full time, because the year that I worked with Simon was incredibly exciting, depressing, horrible, all emotions at once. And but for sure, I in my face, it was pretty obvious that I could not go on trying to coach at the highest level of the sport and continue to do my job in scientific research. So at the end of that season, I was basically saying, like, well, I really have to either quit coaching altogether or quit scientific research, and that's what I did.
Depressing because you were having to make that decision, or depressing because working with someone like that made you somewhat have to undo a few things that you had kind of taken
because basically like the setup that we had and the way we were working was just not enough to compete at that level. And so it was like a lot of frustration also on my side that we had a setup that, while it worked, it wasn't like something that like was in line with the demands of the sport. Having an online coach and not doing real coaching was something that was just not okay. And I decided, that's when I decided, like, hey, this is the kick in the butt that I need to just go full time.
And then from there to your sort of first experiences around preparing athletes for Olympic Games and so on, was Rio 2016 your first? Did you have athletes going to London 2012, or was
no? I didn't have athletes going to London. No.
So Rio with Greg Billington and there was another
John Malloy and Manny Huerta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, when you start a squad from zero, you're starting from zero, and basically the whole concept of the squad, which was like full commitment, year-round camps, all that stuff, was not for everyone. And while I was able to motivate a lot of athletes to come into the squad and to have like a working group in the first few years, obviously, like there was like a very slow a very slow build up in terms of the athletes that I got into the squad, and also the athlete that I got into the squad, and also the level of results that we had. And I felt that it was even slower because doing this in the US, having a squad that's going to be first trying to get like all athletes are available to do this, but then focusing on ITU racing was hard and required a lot of commitment from my end to just like keep going, keep pushing, and to get to the point where we had like a good group of athletes going into 2016, and we were very, very close to having the full men's team for the US in Tokyo. Eric Lagerstrom missed the team right in like the last qualifying race, and so it was like a slow pushing the boulder up the hill that got us there.
So actually, getting Simon on board very early on in your sort of international training career, then was that must have been very helpful for getting those American, at the start of the group, helping to draw those names. But had Simon been a bit of a personal recommendation then, given that he was one of the first names on that list? How did that initially come about?
Well, I think that obviously, like working with somebody like Simon Whitfield does give you like a little bit of profile that I wouldn't have otherwise, and so that was like really helpful. I wouldn't say that like, and this has been something that's been always very a concept that's always been very dear to me, is that when you I am not the coach of like one athlete, and I've always tried to not be the coach of one athlete, and with Simon, while he was like an amazing athlete and had a high profile, I never sold myself as like, hey, my name is Paulo and I used to coach Simon Whitfield. I think that only goes so far, but for sure, I think the athletes that took an interest at the beginning to join the squad were like, well, this guy who seems to like know his stuff, you work with Simon Whitfield. I'm sure that helped to get things rolling for sure.
No, but I also meant just in terms of that first contact with Simon. How did that initially come about, given that was before any of that?
That started like my relationship with Simon started actually like in the build up towards Beijing, because I was friends with Joel Filiol that was coaching Simon at the time,
right?
And then one day I don't even remember how it started, but Simon is a big texter, a big chatter online, and I think that one day he started talking to me, and we started, and my job back in the day was like being on the computer all day, and my job now is a lot being on the computer all day, and that's how we got started. And so basically, I had like from the side of Joel and from the side of Simon, talking both of these guys on a daily basis on the build up towards Beijing was also like a big learning experience of like being on the side of these guys that perform incredibly well in Beijing. So that was kind of like the start of that relationship, and it was also like an incredible learning experience to just have be in contact with Simon. It's kind of hard because all the time that I've worked with Simon, it was kind of like all my effort was to hide how much of a fanboy I am for Simon. I remember that in Sydney, the race was at 4 a.m. in Portugal, and I got up and watched the race, and I had like a race myself like in the next morning, but obviously like super excited to watch him. And so basically like my whole relationship with Simon has been me playing it cool so that he doesn't understand that I'm an incredible fanboy of his.
Just a bit awkward when you had to take all the posters of him down off your walls when he came in.
Yeah, something like that.
So Rio 2016, your first games with those American athletes, and then Tokyo, a very different kind of games. Different number of athletes going and stuff from your group. How is it when you work towards this massive goal with athletes, and then suddenly you kind of almost have to hand them over to their national federation or their NOC, and obviously that was kind of highlighted somewhat by Tokyo and the lack of access generally there and so on. But yeah, is that a sort of a strange quirk of the life of a coach of a training group?
Well, for Tokyo, both for Rio and Tokyo, I was lucky enough that I could have an Olympic accreditation through a small country. So for Rio, I had an accreditation through Puerto Rico because Manny Huerta was racing for Puerto Rico, and for Tokyo, I was lucky enough to have accreditation through Estonia because of Kaidi Kivioja, and so basically that allowed me to be in the Olympic Village, be at the race site, which makes a big difference for all the athletes that I coach. I wouldn't say that I didn't have any athletes that were like hand over to the federations. The federations, I have different relationships with the federations, but it's always going to be that the athletes and me have full control over what we do going into the Olympics. So basically, I wouldn't say that like it's not a handover. It's more of like they're there and the federations are there and they're like supporting the activity, but we have control over what we do. So the week of Tokyo, where I'm going to the pool with the athletes like any other event that I might be at and all that. So ended up being a very normal setup in the way I supported all my athletes in Tokyo.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know if the access suddenly sort of was shuttered down and it kind of didn't.
Well, obviously, it's by happenstance, because if I wasn't working with Kaidi or Manny, I would not have that accreditation, and I would be home watching it on TV. So basically, it just happened. Most federations are not racing to have me there support their athletes, so it was like it just happened. It was just the circumstances.
Yeah. And Joel, who obviously had been kind of, I don't know if you describe him as mentor, but through your early training group years, now moved to head up Australia. So yeah, do you know how that kind of shift has gone? Is that anything that down the line would there's a lot of strong young Portuguese athletes, would you ever kind of think about making that sort of transition, or is there a layer of perhaps politics involved in that as well that would be off-putting?
Well, let me tell you one thing. I had seven athletes racing in Tokyo. I probably should have had 9, and federations are not knocking on my door for me to go work for them. So I think there's a combination here of I really enjoy the work that I do and the setup that I have in terms of the freedom that gives me, and also the can I say bullshit on this podcast?
You can say it, and I might delete it or put a little kind of dog bark in there or something.
What about BS? So basically, like, I think that I was under employment with USA Triathlon in 2018, and it adds a layer of BS and stress that for sure was not something that I enjoyed. And since that situation, I experienced a little bit of a rebirth where I really focus on the work that I do with the athletes and doing the stuff that I enjoy, and not as much relationships with federations or having to deal with a lot of the stuff. So basically, it's like focusing on performance, focusing on the important things are kind of like my path to happiness here.
You're answerable to yourself and to your athletes, and that's it, right? I mean, that's got to be, for a coach like you, that's got to be everything. And your wife. Fair enough. So, all right, great. Well, that brings us bang up to date in terms of, who are the athletes on your roster at the moment? Who have you been hollering out on the pool side most recently in 2022?
Oh my God! If I didn't expect this question, and if I forget about someone, it's gonna be a big problem for me. Okay. Yeah, so let me pull up the list here because I don't want to forget anyone. But we got here working with us. We got Cecilia Santamaria, Claire Michel, Jean Louet, Kairi Kivioja, Maxime Hubert Moosbrugger is new in the squad this year. Miriam Casillas, Natalie Van Coverden, she's back in Australia right now. Roxana Slupek, Stara Village, Seth Ryder, Summer Rappaport, Valerie Barthélemy, and Yuko Takahashi. And training with us as well right now is Takumi Hojo from Japan.
All right. Excellent. The blue-haired wonder.
Well, you need to stay with the news because now it's silver hair. Yeah, Takumi is like a special guy, and it's been interesting to have him here. He's definitely an individual, and it's been a good experience having him here.
Great, and that's quite recent from this last off season, is it? And with Maxime as well.
Yeah, Maxime joined at the beginning of the season, and he was second at World Duathlon Championships last year, and he's an incredible runner. But turns out that he's a very decent swimmer and cyclist. So we're kind of looking forward to have him get started here with the season. And Takumi, he had to stay in Japan because of visa issues to come into Europe and all that stuff. But he's going to be with us through the summer as well.
Yeah, still a little hangover from the whole pandemic situation, right? That's just still causing a few issues.
Yes, and also Schengen rules. You guys in the UK also know right about those now.
Yes, starting to. Yeah, is the year after an Olympic Games kind of always quite a special one in terms of being able to, I guess, setting new longer term goals, having a bit of a reset? Is that how it has worked for the last couple of cycles?
It's a year of like, it's an incredible opportunity for everyone to do things a little different, to go with different approaches, to do things a little different, to change things a little bit with COVID, but also like the feature of Olympic year. You really go with like tried and true tunnel vision to get to the Olympic Games, and there's not a lot of change in what we do, and now it's a great opportunity to have all the change that we want, and this was particularly true for this season, that the season is very shifted towards the end of the season, where this WTCS is only going to start in mid-May. So there was an opportunity here to change our approach a little bit, do new things, do things a little different. So it was really good for that. Usually with a race in the first weekend of March, like a normal season in Abu Dhabi, for example, we have a very intense January and February, where basically a lot of things need to happen during those 2 months, so that we're race ready in Abu Dhabi, and our attitude changed completely with how the season is quote unquote designed for 2022, and also having in mind that these guys will still have to be at their best or very close to their best at the end of November, which is incredibly late for us.
Of course, yeah. So it's about hitting those peaks, extending it as long as possible, and I'd sort of underestimated how often those early races are very much just sort of benchmarking, right? And it's only months down the line that collectively, I guess, all the athletes are really trying to hit that.
For sure, when the season starts in Abu Dhabi, it's basically like hitting the ground running kind of thing, where basically like it's real. It gets real really quick, and with the season like we have right now, it allows us to just do other kinds of work and just build more into the season, and also like have in mind that the athletes need to be mentally fresh in November. So basically the whole season is going to have to be designed towards that, because like I've explained to my athletes, if the grand final is at the end of September or beginning of October, you can power through and make it on sheer willpower to compete at the end of that season. But with a season that ends at the end of November, there's no amount of willpower. If you don't have anything in the tank, you're not going to be able to perform at a good level at the end of the season. So for sure, having that in mind throughout the whole season is going to be important.
And a lot of, I hesitate to use the word distractions, but other things going on throughout the season as well. Obviously, it's kind of kicking off by default now with the arena games. There's the PTO, there's sort of September with Super League and so on as well. So does that, are you finding your athletes and thereby yourself as well being pulled in very many more directions? And does that make planning at this stage of the season even more important or even harder?
There's for sure, like with our races in the horizon, or the important races starting in mid-May, there's a little more time to just do things, paint by numbers, do things by the book, not have to cram training content into 2 months. At the same time, the approach that we have in terms of races or different series, different kind of races, I take like an individual approach to that, where basically I ask my athletes to pick races and define their race calendar based on races that they really want to do. And that's the starting point. Of course, I always tell them that, like, if you want to do something really, really stupid, I'll probably stop you from doing it. But it's really important that on the theme of commitment and ownership, it's very important that the athletes come up with the idea of like, I want to do this race, I want to do this series, I want to commit to this, because then the ownership over preparation and performance is also increased when athletes do that. So it's less about setting a plan in stone. It's more the athletes saying, I want to do this race, or I want to skip this race. I don't want to go there, but I want to go here. And so, with that, it's just things like the race calendar is a lot more organic and also a lot more individual. And those are two things that are welcomed by me.
Mm-hmm. Would you see the arena games as a, in this period now as a welcome thing as well, or is it sort of such a different style of racing that it's a bit of an outlier?
Well, I'm going to be totally honest. I wish that the arena games would have stayed with COVID. So basically, like, COVID is over and the arena games are over as well. I think that it's something that I think there's a push for esports and all that stuff. I'm pretty old school when it comes to that, and also, like, the sport is not really like moving to that direction. Basically, when we have World Triathlon deciding that Paris is going to be an Olympic distance, the individual race is going to be an Olympic distance. The arena games are something that's as far as possible from Olympic distance triathlon. So in terms of distraction, it's like, if athletes want to do it, I wouldn't have like a problem with that. But at the same time, it's not something that I'm like saying like, hey, you really should go into arena games. Super League is a little bit different because Super League, the racing has some aspects that I think it's really good for development to get athletes out of their comfort zone, and that might make them better at quote unquote real triathlon, that kind of thing. So I think that's a good thing, and it's also an opportunity for athletes to be professionals and make money, because I think that I encourage my athletes to be professionals and to if possible make a living out of triathlon for sure.
I guess the evolution of the arena games is the interesting thing as well, of who it's gonna attract and how it will find its place on the calendar, right? And as far as there being a general move towards e-games and whatever your opinion of those is, the fact that triathlon can produce a e-game, but one that is so sort of physically demanding at the same time, puts it in a unique and very interesting space.
Yeah, but the counterpoint that I would make is that, for example, like a triathlon like Lisbon is a format that ends up occupying the same physical space more or less than an arena games, and it's something that for me and even for the athletes, it's so much more interesting to watch. I don't know if you watched. This was the second year that I've watched that race, and it's incredibly exciting to watch it, and it looks like triathlon. And I think it's something that I think that format would be something that I would really love World Triathlon to embrace more as kind of like a winter sport, a winter activity, because it happens so fast. It's so easy for people that are not interested in triathlon to sit down and watch a race, and something happens every minute. I think that's the attractiveness of the shorter distances, is something happens every 3, 4, 5 minutes, and the appeal that has for mainstream audiences is huge. You're in Europe, and you know that, for example, biathlon is an incredibly popular sport with audiences that are not biathletes, because it's so exciting. You watch and they go into the range and everything might change, and so I'm a big fan of like super sprint distances that just have a huge appeal to audiences that are not familiar with triathlon, and for sure that's I'm a little disappointed that Olympic distance is still in the Olympics, because ends up being not a great TV product, not a great mainstream audience product, and that hurts our sport.
Just need more indoor swimming pools with running tracks and bike lanes around the edge of them, right?
Well, the like mounting an indoor swimming pool is actually pretty easy. There were some races with that sort of format that were put on in the US a few years ago, and then basically, there's people out there that rent like a over the ground pool. So this can be set up in a lot of venues like Lieven, and I think it's a really exciting format that I would love to see more of it.
And I think, to your point on the standard distance, it's almost the windows of opportunity that such a long race could provide, right? As far as second screen entertainment or insights or stats and so on going on. I take your point about, there's an hour of bike there, but it's also about new ways of presenting what is going on and what's got these people here, right? And kind of using those spaces, as it were, to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
So Summer Rappaport, she currently stands top of the series rankings. We're 2 races in by virtue of the pandemic and the rearranged races as well. So yeah, I guess that doesn't change much. It extended the end of last season a bit, but then that has made this extended start of this season even more valuable, I guess. And is 2022, an opportunity for someone like her, do you think, to really burst through? Are there people you've got an eye on that you think can take on Blummy, or is it inevitable that he'll tighten his grip this year?
Well, about Summer was like kind of like a little bit of a surprise that she's number one in the rankings. Obviously, it's a curiosity of the rankings. Doesn't have like a lot of importance. The same way with Taylor Spivey being number one in world ranking. I think that I would obviously like, when you have like a large squad, like talking about one individual is always hard for me in terms of like the work that I do and the expectations or the work that we do with the athletes, meaning that we're going as hard as we can with everyone, and with Summer, it's the same thing. Every athlete has one thing to work on or a couple of things to work on to be good in this sport, and that's what's going on with Summer and all my athletes. It was just like a little bit of a curiosity that she ended up number one. But obviously we're like this season we're like incredibly committed to this season and to get better. Summer is someone that works very hard every day and works very hard to overcome the challenges that we put in front of her every day. So we're kind of like excited about this season, like we were excited about, every other season that we've worked together. And it's a little bit of the it's a part of like the squad philosophy for me is that as much as possible work with the athletes as individuals and find an individual place to interact with them, to have a relationship with them in the squad environment. So the attitude towards like the athlete A or athlete B is not going to be incredibly different, but working with them as individuals. And that's how, individual development is going to occur.
Is that one of the main skills that you have to develop or hone, is within a pool full of people, each with different skill sets, or on a track full of people, trying to hone an individual program and moment, and make sure that out of every session someone is taking something kind of specific out of it?
Yeah, for sure. Like when you work with a large squad and is about like for each of the sessions or each of the sessions that we're focusing on, or our coach sessions, to create work groups that are going to be working together and either being like a target pace or a group that's working together on the bike, or even having different groups on the swim, even though that's less common. But for sure, creating mini work groups that are going to be doing a session and doing it together. So it ends up that if we're doing like, let's say, a track session, maybe not everyone's going to be doing that track session, and those that are doing are going to be working in groups of 2 or 3. So basically, like this breaks down things to a level that athletes have a training partner to do a particular session, and but at the same time we are trying to be as individual as possible. So I'm trying to strike a balance between, I don't want everybody to do the same stuff all the time, but I also don't want everybody to show up at the track or the pool and each one has a different session. So basically it's like striking a balance between those two limits, those two opposites.
And wildly different sort of needs, I suppose. There was an interesting thing that Matt McElroy was saying on Slow Twitch about some of the swim drills that you were doing with him and focusing on, and he's even, how kind of these slightly untraditional approaches to, a lot of pool boy work and so on. Oh, no, not pool boy. I can't remember what it was.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what website you referred to. I've never heard of Slow Twitch, but for sure, with Matt, when we started with Matt was not a swimmer, and for sure with him, we just had to like create an approach that was completely for him, So basically, like he spent years doing stuff that was just for him, and as he got better, then he transitioned to just like do more stuff with the rest of the group, and that's kind of like a little bit how things operate with everyone that just starts from a very low level. They're beginners or they're just starting in the sport. That's work that I'm still doing and I enjoy doing, and needs to be like, it's not just show up and train with the squad, because that's not going to work.
Having someone who's incredibly strong in two disciplines and just can't quite crack a third must be quite. I'm not saying this is about Matt McRae. This is moving on from that.
No, Matt was podium at a WTS, so that's definitely not that.
Exactly. But so, for example, another very strong runner that I read you're working with, Mary Kane, who is something of a track phenomenon and junior world record holder and so on, right? So, and a very strong swimmer, perhaps less so on the bike. How, can you tell us a bit about her, and is she someone that we'll be hearing a lot more of?
Well, regarding Mary, I think that Mary is an incredible, accomplished runner. That the things that she accomplished in her running career are incredible. In terms of triathlon, she still hasn't accomplished anything in triathlon. So, like, talking about her, I think would be like premature. I think she's just getting started in triathlon. She already has a lot of attention on her, which is something for sure like new for me. Like when I started working with Matt, it's not like people are writing articles about Matt McElroy coming to triathlon, huh? So basically, it's one of those things that I have a new athlete and I'm going to go to work and do what I do, and instead I always hear other coaches when they have somebody that's going to be quote unquote famous. There's a lot of talk, and like a famous Portuguese footballer once said, we're going to do our talking with our feet. So basically, that's my approach regarding Mary or anyone in our situation that's coming over. I mean, for example, I've had a very good runner come over to triathlon, Chelsea Sodaro, and there's somebody that accomplished a lot in a very short period of time. And so that's the kind of thing that we're trying to accomplish here with Mary.
And I guess just bringing someone like that into the group, well, as with Maxim as well, it must always be nice to have that bit of refresh. Obviously great to have those regulars and they're coming back, and then just someone coming in and sort of shaking things up and showing what they can do as well is always got to be a positive, right?
For sure. I can start out by saying that I was incredibly proud and pleasantly surprised with how all the athletes that I was coaching last year returned for this season. The only athlete that didn't return was Vendula Frintova, but she was already going to retire after Tokyo. So I'm incredibly proud that these athletes chose to come back to the squad after Tokyo. It's something that made me very happy. At the same time, having new athletes come in, it's also exciting. It's new beginnings. It's new ways of new people, new personalities. So that's always super, super exciting. But in a way, what I try to do every season is also that at the start of the season, we are doing things a little differently. We are changing things up. We are trying to improve in things that we've done in the past. So these guys that have been with me all for many years will tell you that, well, every start of the season is going to be a little different. The stuff that we were doing before, maybe we're not doing anymore. We're still doing some of the stuff that we were doing before, but we've changed some things. So I kind of like to keep it fresh, because nobody likes to be in the hamster wheel. And after a few years, that's if you keep doing the same stuff, that's what's going to feel like.
And in a situation where someone's coming in with very little or no triathlon experience, are you the sort of, is it a good thing to have other more experienced, more senior members of the group come around and sort of try and give them the benefit of their experience? Or would you rather that was all coming from you and you can sort of shape those first kind of thoughts of those first races?
Well, it depends on the characteristic of the athletes, huh? Usually, like, having somebody new means more work for me, in terms of, like, there's a lot of more intervention that I have to have, in terms of, like, making things work. At the same time, it's very important to me that every athlete here, I sometimes say, like, there's no training partners in this squad. There's nobody here that is here because great training partner, gets along with the group, great guy, great gal. It's just like, there's nobody like that in the squad. It's like, and even if somebody's in the squad thinking that that's their role, then it's not. And if they want that role, it's not available to them. Basically, is everyone here is full on, be very good at triathlon, okay? And with that in mind, we are trying, like a little bit of corporate jargon. We're trying to explore synergies between the athletes in how they can help each other, but still help themselves. Meaning that, like, nobody's here to help another athlete. It's like you're helping each other to get better. But triathlon is still an incredibly individual sport, and these guys compete against each other. So we need to be, like, aware, or I need to be aware of situations where someone is being relied upon to, like, help others more than they are getting helped. And managing those balances, managing that balance is one of the things that I do with a large squad.
And I suppose those synergies could be whether it's your first World Cup start or your first WTCS start, or you starting the season wanting to hit that first World Cup podium or WTCS podium, right? And there can be those sort of twin pillars of very different.
More in the day-to-day work, where basically like we create situations that are going to be group training situations, and that the athletes are helping themselves and helping each other. So basically, like, create situations where there's a good balance between I'm giving something to the others, to the group, but I'm also getting something from this situation. I think that it's very important to me that everyone in the squad is seen as, like, a high-performing individual, and that might be in different stages of their development as athletes.
Yeah, I see that on a day-to-day. I guess I was thinking more sort of at this stage of the season as you're kind of planning ahead, and each one of those on your roster has a very different goal, right? That they would hit the end of November and look back and go, brilliant, hit that, or didn't quite hit that, and that in itself is quite difficult to manage, is it?
We in terms of goals, or seeing, like, we don't have, like, I don't impose my expectations on them either. Like, I'm not a manager of expectations, meaning that I don't pump them up because I think they need to be pumped up, or like lower the expectations because I kind of, like, sense that might be disappointment coming up. I try to develop a mindset where they go out there and try to do their best every time they race, and the way we manipulate some training variables will maybe create, like, conditions for better performances, or not so great performances, or like not like peak performances, let's call it that. But basically, like the mindset that I'm trying to develop is every time we go out to perform, it's going to be to give our best. I've had someone ask one of my athletes what was their A race, and they didn't know what was their A race. And I replied to them, I said, more than A races, I don't want any of the athletes that I coach to go out to a race and say, like, at the start line, and they're, oh, this is just my B race. I don't want to say that like all races are A races, because they're not. But at the same time, in terms of mindset, you got to be, if you show up, you got to be on, you got to be ready to perform. You got to be 100%.
Brilliant. Well, if there's a couple of sort of slightly more quick fire questions that I'd quite like to get into with you, if that's all right. For example, if you could sit your athletes collectively in a room with someone from the sport of triathlon, past or present, for 1 hour, they've got 1 hour to impart their wisdom, who would that person be?
Well, that's a tough question, huh? I think that like anyone, you can learn from a lot of people, a lot of different people, and like I said, like triathlon is a very individual sport, and just looking at the athletes that I coach, I think that they have very different personalities, very different ways of seeing the world. The fact that it's an international sport, international group, also they have very different cultures, like their home country cultures are very different between themselves, and it's kind of like interesting to watch that. And when you ask me like, oh, somebody that would talk, I always see like that kind of thing as there's a champion mindset, and the athletes need to learn that champion mindset, while champions are people that learned to create their own mindset, to create their own ways of seeing things, to create their own way to approach the sport. So basically, in terms of like giving my athletes learning opportunities, I would much prefer to give them opportunities to develop their own champion mindsets that's going to be born in their own personalities, instead of sitting them down with Simon and say like, well, Simon is Simon used to say, get obsessed, stay obsessed, which is something that while it worked for him and his personality, I don't think it's going to work for a lot of people. You understand? So basically, like, this obviously does not answer your question, because you were probably going to go like, I was going to go, this guy that won this race, or this guy's amazing, or that woman is amazing. But it's more like any learning opportunity that my athletes, or athletes in general, can to question and develop their mindset, the way they approach the sport, then it's going to be a positive influence on them.
Yeah. And nobody who's achieved anything, or indeed nothing in the sport, has had the magic bullet, right? There's so many things that have had to drop into place along the way that, So in another sense, so talking about the magic bullet or non-existence of Christian and Flora winning the World Championships and the Olympics in the same year for the first time, both of them at the same time, coincidence, something that can be repeated. We've had Jan Frodeno, Gwen Jorgensen come so close to doing it, and even greats like that couldn't. So, are they two of the most sort of peak performance years that we've ever seen in the sport, do you think?
I think that the both of those performances were kind of like at the end of a process that they started, and both of them were like the favorites to win their respective races. In terms of like that performance, I don't think it was like a huge surprise. In terms of like the World Championship, I think that not as much with those guys, but then like the podium of the World Championship and how that worked out. The fact that the Olympics counted as points for the World Championship also has like a big factor here, meaning when those points were not available to everyone, and that skews things a little bit. But so, you know, in Olympic year, only the Olympics matters. And while it's great that those guys were also world champions, it's basically like the work there was done, you know, the work that was done, and the amazing performance that already happened, you know. So the World Championship ends up being secondary there, you know. Like, to tell you the truth, like you just mentioned Gwen and Flora in Cozumel, and I don't remember who was the world champion that year. Was it Flora? But I do for sure know who was the Olympic champion, you know. So basically, like, it's on Olympic year, there's only one thing that's going to matter.
Yeah, I guess it was a very peculiar year as well, like you said, in terms of numbers of races going on because of COVID. Which brings us to, after, you know, the experience the last 2 years or so on, has it just sort of completely underlined the fact that there is no substitute for the coach being on the side with his athlete? You know, does long distance coaching work? Can it work?
I think that it's one thing that's interesting is that this is a question that's very, very particular to triathlon. I can tell you that here in Montegordo, it's a location that is very popular with track and field athletes, and what I see if I go to the track or if I drive around, what I see is groups of athletes with their coaches, and they're working on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes by going into Instagram or by somebody telling you like, oh, that's the Olympic champion for this, or for example, the 50K race walking Olympic champion was here doing a training camp, and then what you see is like groups of athletes with coaches, and then in triathlon you see something like, you know, a guy at home on Training Peaks, quote unquote, coaching athletes. And it's kind of like one of those things that this difference between online coaching and real coaching at the highest level is something that it's a triathlon thing. It's not really like a high level sports thing. And so it's kind of interesting to get that question that's so specific to triathlon. But to answer your question, what happened during COVID is I found out, or I confirmed that I'm not an online coach, meaning what I do is be out there with the athletes on a day-to-day, doing training camps, managing the athletes online when I have to, when because that's going to happen always, but in short periods of time, or in periods of time that's the only option. But the online coaching is incredibly comfortable for the coaches. I got back to playing tennis, and that was wonderful for me. I have a lot of time. If I'm in California and the athletes are in Europe, I only work in the morning, and I have the rest of the day for myself. So it's incredibly comfortable for the coaches, but I don't think like every other sport shows us, that's not a high level solution for athletes. So you have nobody is like a high level swimmer and is getting their session on Training Peaks and goes out and bangs out 12K a day on just because they got a training session on Training Peaks. So that's kind of like where the term real coaching showed is basically like this is coaching, is me being with the athletes. If coaches, I understand that coaches don't want to do it, and I mean, I love being home and being with my family and just chilling just logging in and doing some online work, but it's not coaching, and it's not coaching for me, and that's not the kind of work that I enjoy doing.
Do you work, to what extent do you work on the sort of mental toughness of your athletes, and, you know, in terms of mental health and so on? Are you comfortable, are you happy being a sounding board for them as well? Obviously hugely case by case basis in terms of who you're working with and their personality, but do you see that as a fairly major part of your role as well?
Yes and no. I would say that, like, for sure, like as the years gone by, I've definitely like gone away from the coach psychologist concept, meaning that I think that's not going to be my role. I feel that the athletes need to have room to just not tell everything to their coach, not have to, I don't see the coach as like having like prodding conversations, therapy-like conversations. And but of course, I'm not like close to athletes sharing stuff with me. I don't want to be like, an athlete comes to me and says like, this personal tragedy happened to me, and I'm like, I don't want to hear about it. Let's do 10 by 100 on 130. So basically, like, I'm not closed, but I think that, like, for two reasons. I think that, like, first, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a professional, nor do I play one on TV. And second is, I think that a professional can be a lot more helpful to them than I can. So basically, I encourage my athletes to seek professional help, not in the way of the expression you need professional help, but more like having somebody that is a trained individual that is able to provide them support from a sports psychology point of view. And I encourage those kinds of relationships for the athletes to have. I think it's important if they can find a space to share some of those things. I think it's important for them. That doesn't have to be their coach. At the same time, obviously, I'm not completely unaware of mental health struggles that my athletes might have, and that might come like by adjusting load or by encouraging them to talk to someone, or by talking to them as well, and seeking a solution or something that's going to that's going to allow us to move forward here. But for sure, I've departed from like the coach psychologist model and be more like the coach in terms of like kind of like having support from other people that are going to be better at that job than I am, because I don't have formal training. At the same time, I also like that some federations provide sports psychology services, which are very helpful. And I kind of like that those services have like no connection to me, which I think is which is really, really good. So basically, like, I've never talked to these people, I don't know who they are, and basically like the athletes can find a safe space as well that's not connected to the coaching, which I think is also important for them to have.
Subliminally, I guess you're creating, it looks like your group of athletes is a very positive, self-supporting, that there's a nice atmosphere there. Subliminally, the way that you coach them creates a supportive structure within itself as well, right? I mean, there's got to be a healthy culture that you're not necessarily actively thinking, right, what have I got to do to try and keep these people as happy and motivated as you like as possible. But it's something that comes out of how you handle yourself and how you interact with them.
For sure, like fine tuning like the mood of the group and the environment is in my job description. It's important that we a group that is able to work together in a fluid way, while we might minimize like conflicts or stress. I think that my goal is for the environment to be low stress, because it's already like the environment can be very overwhelming. You have to be like, your competitors are in your face, like, 24 hours, not 24 hours a day, but a lot of the time. And there's a lot of things that we do that are designed for things to run smooth. And one of the things that we do is we don't compete in training. So basically there's never a situation with competition in training. And I can tell you that, like, for example, last year, I did this training situation where I was thinking about just the technical aspect of it, which was have everybody start a repetition together. And the feedback I got from the athletes was like, whoa, that was way too much like a competition up that hill. And I really did not enjoy that. And I wasn't even thinking about competition, but it turned into that. And the athletes were the first ones to raise the flag. So I would say that like a big aspect of what we do is like, do not compete in training. If I have like some athletes that are like particularly like competitive against each other, like I put them like in different lanes on the swim or different work groups or something like that, so that we kind of like keep things very, very chill, and that's one goal that I have, is just like have like a very low stress environment, and let the training be the stress and not other stuff.
Comparison is sort of human nature, I guess, isn't it? But competitiveness can get a bit unproductive. Well, I don't want to sound trite, but given that, I've got a world-class coach sat in front of me, I'd like to just wrap up with do you have, this might not be something that works at all, but do you have like a golden rule, as someone who, could you go through 3 disciplines and give us like the Paulo Sousa golden rule for each one, please?
I can tell you some of the things that we do, a few of the sayings. One saying regarding the pool, regarding the swimming is 5K a day keeps the second pack away. That's one of the things that one saying that we've had for a lot of time. In terms of the bike, the guys will probably tell you that usually when we have a new place that we train, I usually like find a hill, and we go up a hill many times. So for example, in every training location that we've had, there's a hill that we're going to go up a lot of times. I remember one year in California, there was this hill that we would use, and we had some athletes go up this particular hill more than 50 times in a training block. So that's
an evil laugh.
That's one of the things that we do in terms of cycling. In terms of running, is like do everything to stay healthy. Everything to stay healthy. And that's the biggest thing that we have directing our running program, is do everything to stay healthy. And that means different things for every single athlete. So basically, if you think about individualization of training loads, the individualization comes in more on the run, because there's different ways of keeping different athletes performing healthy and performing. So that's kind of like, that's the overwhelming like philosophy of the run program. I know that some athletes out there are indestructible and never get injured, but I've never coached anyone like that. So we have to work really hard to just keep everyone healthy, and we're not 100% successful all the time.
Brilliant. Well, thanks ever so much for the insights. It's been fascinating.
2022,
looking forward to it. Are you excited?
Yeah. I'm pretty excited about 2022. I think that as hopefully COVID will be behind us, and it's not going to be like the before times, but it's going to be a new normal that's going to be increasingly more normal. I think that we all could use a little normality in our lives, and with the season starting and summer coming, I think it's going to be, I'm excited about like going back to doing normal stuff for sure. And it's going to be a lot of things happening, a lot of balls up in the air with the season, but for sure, kind of like looking forward to not have like COVID constraints and just operate more like normal. So that I'm excited about that for sure.
All right. Well, thanks, Paulo. It's been brilliant.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.